On the day we pledged our vows, Julian Hayes deserted me at the altar. My fingers clung to the fabric of his sleeve, a desperate, trembling anchor. We're about to go on stage, I begged, the words fraying at the edges. Don't leave. He didn't so much as glance back. Just shook my hand away like a bothersome insect. Chloe Miller is in danger right now. I'll be back soon. Tears had long since ravaged my composure. My makeup lay in ruins, my voice a shredded thing from screaming, but this time, resolve hardened within me, cold, unyielding. If you leave, I said, each syllable sharp as glass, don't bother coming back. The officiant's voice still hung in the air, warm and ceremonial, and now, please welcome today's bride and groom. A wave of cheers rose from our gathered family and friends, but Julian showed no hesitation, no backward glance. Only the relentless forward motion of a man chasing another priority. He offered no apology, no explanation, just vanished through the ballroom doors. And so he left me, alone, exposed, a spectacle at my own wedding. The officiant stood frozen nearby, his face a mask of bewildered pity. He'd clearly never witnessed a scene like this. Miss Vance, he ventured softly, should the wedding continue? A cold laugh escaped me, brittle and sharp. Why not continue? I replied, everyone's here today, how could I ruin everyone's fun? He showed no mercy, so why should I? It wasn't as if no one else wanted to marry me, but thinking of all the years of my efforts wasted, it truly stung. Under the bewildered gazes of everyone at the wedding, I called Marcus Hayes. Help me out. Want to get married? Marcus Hayes's deep voice held a slight chuckle as he walked out the main entrance of the ballroom, holding his phone. He wore a black suit, his hair neatly styled, shedding some of his carefree demeanor and gaining a dignified and serious air. Just having a wedding isn't enough. We need to get a marriage license, right? That jerk still couldn't resist to tease me. I glared fiercely at him, but in the end, gritting my teeth, I agreed to his request. Fine, we'll register after the wedding. It wasn't until Marcus Hayes and I stood on the stage that Julian Hayes's mother reacted, erupting in rage as she looked at me. Eleanor Vance, this is supposed to be your wedding with Julian Hayes. How can you just switch grooms? I calmly completed the ring exchange with Marcus Hayes, then snatched the microphone from the officiant's hand. Then tell me, Mrs. Hayes, where is Julian Hayes right now? To Mrs. Hayes was speechless by my words. Of course, she had no idea where Julian Hayes had gone. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Julian Hayes had run out of the ballroom without looking back, offering no explanation whatsoever. I didn't wait for Mrs. Hayes's answer and continued on my own. Julian Hayes's mistress, Chloe Miller, attempted suicide for love. Julian Hayes was so heartbroken, he even cancelled this wedding. A fickle, heartless, and ungrateful man like that. I don't want him from now on. Julian Hayes and I have nothing to do with each other. My husband is Marcus Hayes. Julian Hayes's actions, exposed by me in front of everyone, caused the entire ballroom to erupt in an uproar. Mrs. Hayes's face went pale, unable to find any excuse. She could only point a trembling finger at Marcus Hayes. Eleanor Vance, you can marry anyone, but not this Marcus H. I couldn't help but let out a sneer. Mrs. Hayes, this is my business. Eleanor Vance's business. Mr. Hayes has no objections, so you don't need to concern yourself with it. The Hayes family stood by and watched, silent. They all knew Marcus Hayes was Mr. Hayes's son, born out of wedlock, and that he carried the Hayes family bloodline. The marriage alliance agreed upon by the Vance family and the Hayes family, completed by Marcus Hayes, was naturally within the terms. Even Mrs. Hayes, unable to find any excuse, turned pale and fainted. The scene became chaotic. My self-destructive move ultimately caused my wedding to end abruptly. However, Julian Hayes became infamous in society. His reputation plummeted, and the Hayes family's assets also took a hit. I was never one to be easily subdued. I had only hit her Sharpie Diaz in front of him. Now that Julian Hayes was no longer important to me, it was only natural for him to fully experience the consequences of offending me. 3 weeks had passed before I saw Julian Hayes again. I hadn't contacted Julian Hayes at all. That week in the past, I would always be the first to back down, no matter if it was my fault or not. I would always end up apologizing. Unfortunately, even the deepest love has a time when it runs out. Now, I no longer loved him, nor would I compromise. Having just taken over the family business, I was already swamped with no headspace to overthink things. Finally, I managed to handle all the affairs. The sky grew dark and heavy. Rain began to fall. I was waiting for my car in the parking lot. That's when Julian Hayes arrived. My assistant tugged my sleeve. Ms. Vance, Mr. Hayes is here. Julian Hayes's face held a hint of guilt and heavy dark circles under his eyes. He must have spent a lot of effort these past few days taking care of and comforting his mistress, Chloe Miller. I'm sorry I'm late. His voice was low, and he promised me again. Ellie, don't worry, I still remember my promise to marry you. My wife, Julian Hayes's wife, will only ever be you. He knelt on one knee before me, pulling out a ring from who knows where. TSK, definitely not my type. The wedding ring I had carefully chosen last time was already on Marcus Hayes's, and my hands. Marry me, Ellie, this time I'll arrange the grandest wedding. I laughed in exasperation, slapped the ring out of his hand. I wouldn't want a scumbag like you. If your mistress likes picking up trash, she can have him. Oh, and Mr. Hayes, please give Chloe Miller my regards. I hope you two deserve each other. Julian Hayes's face darkened, but he didn't reply because he had seen the ring on my finger. He grabbed my wrist, trying to forcibly remove the ring. A strong, powerful arm wrapped around my waist, and Julian Hayes was kicked away in one swift move. Julian, you need to show your sister-in-law some respect, or next time I won't go easy on you. I caught the familiar scent of cedar from Marcus Hayes and leaned lazily into his embrace, not moving. Julian Hayes's face had turned utterly grim. Marcus Hayes, you're just a son born out of wedlock. What right do you have to steal her from me? Eleanor Vance, you know my temper. I'm giving you one more chance. You know how much I dislike him. If you come back to me, everything that's yours will be yours. Perhaps my favoritism towards Julian Hayes all these years had made him forget my true nature. I remained still in Marcus Hayes's arms. Marcus Hayes kept my chin, gave Julian Hayes a provocative look, and then kissed me. We kissed passionately. I didn't even notice when Julian Hayes left for the Vance family, and the Hayes family had been friends for generations. I was 3 years older than Julian Hayes. My parents passed away when I was young, and my grandma raised me. Before grandma passed, she couldn't bear to leave me alone, so she arranged my engagement to the Hayes family. When we were little, Julian Hayes was like a shadow, constantly calling Ellie, Ellie, and trailing after me. Marcus Hayes was brought into the Hayes family by Mr. Hayes when I was 11. He never called me sis from a young age. He always went against me, and when it came to fighting, he was ruthless. Even now, Marcus Hayes remains an unpredictable, ruthless character in front of outsiders. Perhaps it was out of weariness of Marcus Hayes's methods I gradually began to take over the family businesses, and none of the uncles in the family caused any trouble for me until my birthday. Suddenly, big news about Marcus Hayes and me spread online. It claimed I was being a homewrecker, and timing it suggested Marcus Hayes and I were publicly ambiguous while I was secretly seducing Julian Hayes. The story of me, the villainess, and Chloe Miller, the idealized girlfriend, was all over the internet. I didn't need to be told who the mastermind behind it was before I could even act. All the bad news about me online was blocked and cleared. Only a marriage certificate remained along with court summons for the most trolling keyboard warriors. Is my wife someone you can slander? Wait for my summons. Marcus Hayes's message instantly spread across the network, making everyone on edge. My lips curved slightly. That rascal was somewhat useful after all. Soon after, I also posted a photo online. It was one of the few photos of Marcus Hayes and me together. That year, I graduated from college wearing my academic gown with Marcus Hayes's ear pulled by me. A younger man who won't call me sis definitely has wilder intentions. 5 That evening, Marcus Hayes prepared a birthday banquet for me. The number of guests was small, just a few of our rare friends. The only thing that annoyed me was Julian Hayes's presence at the banquet. I shot Marcus Hayes a blank look. He pulled his neck back and timidly said, I didn't invite him. I don't know why he's here. Julian Hayes watched Marcus Hayes and me arm in arm, his gaze dark. He sat alone in a corner, saying nothing. It wasn't until he presented his gift that he stood before me, offering the gift he had prepared long ago. Ellie, this is the deep sea pendant you've always wanted. The pale blue pendant reflected my indifferent gaze. What used to be a raging inferno had long since become calm and peaceful. It's funny to think about Julian Hayes and I were childhood sweethearts, yet from childhood to adulthood, I had never received a single gift from him. Every time it was my unlimited devotion. I would even run all over the city just for a word from him to find him a satisfactory gift. Julian Hayes gazed deeply at me, then cast a challenging look at Marcus Hayes. Ellie, come with me and I'll give you everything you want. Some things aren't for just a Nyan. To offer a sneer touched my lips. His Self-importance had never changed perhaps in his eyes. I was the kind of woman who could be sweet-talked with just a few words. I'm so sorry, but I already told you that day I wouldn't want a scumbag like you if you left. Don't bother coming back. Julian Hayes's face was beyond grim. As the eldest young master of the Hayes family, he was used to others seeking him out. He had never been subjected to such indignation. Marcus Hayes gave me a slight kiss on the corner of my mouth, then added with a sarcastic undertone, "The young Mr. Hayes's gift is priceless. You might not want the man, but you can take the gift. Unlike me, I don't have anything impressive to offer. I can only give you myself, a Marcus Hayes," and I shared a moment of sweet intimacy. Julian Hayes's face was truly unreadable. "Eleanor Vance, you'd better remember what you said today. I'll make you regret it." He made a mortified exit that night. Marcus Hayes set off a grand display of colorful fireworks for me. Under the colorful fireworks, I looked at Marcus Hayes's chiseled face. "Marcus, have you always liked me?" His expression was unreadable. Guess 6. The events of the birthday party quickly spread. Everyone knew that Julian Hayes and I had completely fallen out. Unfortunately, before Julian Hayes could even target me, Grandfather Hayes couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed. When Marcus Hayes and I arrived at the hospital, the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Julian Hayes's face was grim, and his face darkened even further when he saw Marcus Hayes. "This is the Hayes family. It's no place for a son born out of wedlock like you." Marcus Hayes, holding my hand, gave a carefree chuckle. "You asked me what right I had to compete with you for her. You'll find out soon enough." Grandfather Hayes ultimately couldn't make it through, however. Marcus Hayes's name was entered into the Hayes family registry. When the will was final lie revealed, Marcus Hayes received 10% of Hayes Corporation shares. This wasn't a huge share, but it was certainly not small. It already surpassed most other members of the Hayes family. Even Julian Hayes himself only held 15% of the shares. This outcome was somewhat unexpected, yet also within reason. Julian Hayes's gaze fell on Marcus Hayes and me. As a meticulously trained heir of a wealthy family, he was certainly not incompetent. He quickly realized that Marcus Hayes's substantial share ownership was naturally influenced by his marriage to me. A sneer appeared on Julian Hayes's face. "Eleanor Vance, do you really think Marcus Hayes loves you? You're just a stepping stone for him. You'll be used and discarded like an old shoe sooner or later." Unfortunately, his faint composure couldn't hide the slight tremor in his hands. I knew he must be full of regret now. His ambition had always been grand. He wanted a mutually beneficial alliance. He wanted to control the entire Hayes family. He wanted me, and he wanted Chloe Miller, but a greedy person would eventually burst from greed. "Julian Hayes, you can't be too greedy if your stomach isn't that big. Don't try to eat so much." All these years, I had given him too many misconceptions, making him truly believe I was a woman he could manipulate. That's why he dared to abandon me at the wedding. But now, someone eventually had to bear the consequences of his bad deeds. 7. What I hadn't expected was that Chloe Miller would dare to appear at Grandfather Hayes's funeral, perhaps out of respect for Grandfather Hayes's final dignity. Mrs. Hayes didn't cause too much of a scene, but her cold tone made me feel disheartened. Without being thick-skinned and resilient, one truly couldn't endure Mrs. Hayes's words. After the funeral, Chloe Miller arranged to meet me at the diner near the old high school. Chloe Miller and I were old acquaintances. She and Julian Hayes were classmates. When I was little, I often went to play with Julian Hayes, and after a few interactions, we became acquainted. Many years had passed, and the pale-faced, skinny girl in plain clothes from high school had completely changed. The sparkle of confidence she once had in her eyes was gone, replaced by materialistic wealth. Chloe Miller carelessly tossed her international luxury brand bag onto the table, then smiled lightly at me. "Long time no see, Eleanor. You're still as beautiful as ever." I looked at her deeply, feeling a pang of sympathy. She had changed a lot, yet one thing remained exactly the same as when she was little: her unmasked jealousy. When she looked at me, you, however, have changed a lot. To be honest, the current Chloe Miller disappoints me greatly. These were my true feelings when she was little. Although she was jealous of me, she never resorted to any despicable means. She was like a small blade of grass, independent and striving, pushing desperately to break through the soil and grow upward. But now, the studious and resilient person who fought for scholarships was gone without a trace. Chloe Miller furiously smashed her glass onto the floor. "Do you think I wanted to be like this? I'm not like you. Science of wealthy families able to live a carefree life, dressed beautifully with Everyone being kind to you and liking you, lacking nothing. Now I only have Julian Hayes. I watched her vent coldly after she finished her last sentence. I simply asked in return, so that's your reason for being a homewrecker? I'm not a homewrecker. Chloe Miller puffed up her cheeks, her eyes filled with resentment. Although you two were childhood sweethearts, Julian Hayes has always loved me. I'm his idealized love and we are mutually in love. You're the third party who interfered in our relationship. Chloe Miller's shameless face utterly disgusted me. All this time, everyone around Julian Hayes knew I was his girlfriend, yet Chloe Miller had been kept hidden by Julian Hayes. She never truly understood what a wealthy family entailed, nor did she understand the so-called ruthlessness of such families. I wasn't going to continue talking to someone who couldn't see reality. Let's end this. You and Julian Hayes can resolve your own affairs. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Perhaps Chloe Miller took my departure as backing down. She grabbed my hand. Eleanor, promise me you won't go after Julian Hayes again. I can't live without him. I shook off Chloe Miller's hand, revealing the wedding ring on my finger. You should say that to Julian Hayes. I'm already married. Tell him to stop bothering me. Chloe Miller paused for 2 seconds, then suddenly sat down on the floor. Shards of broken glass cut her calf. She grabbed my pant leg, pleaded desperately, I truly love Julian Hayes. Eleanor, please let us be together. At that point, I strongly suspected Chloe Miller was out of her mind. I'm not his mother. You're begging the wrong person. If you're out of your mind, go get help. Just as I was stunned by her baffling actions, Julian Hayes calmly walked in from outside the restaurant. I didn't know when he arrived or how much he had heard, but his dark face was utterly grim, and he immediately picked up Chloe Miller. If you have any complaints, direct them at me. It's Julian Hayes who wronged you. Why bother a woman? Julian Hayes shielded Chloe Miller behind him. It was as if he was afraid I would cause another scandalous act. Watching their tender display, I once again felt that all my feelings for him these past years were wasted. Indeed, it takes two to tango. Neither of them was any good. I sneered twice, my sharp nail poking Julian Hayes's chest. Julian Hayes, all these years you've been eating from your bowl while eyeing the pot. Aren't you afraid of bursting from greed? My words unreservedly exposed his despicable intentions. He didn't dare meet my gaze and just grabbed my hand. Ellie, let's talk now. There wasn't much left for him and me to talk about besides self-interest. Before I could answer, Chloe Miller cried out, her leg bleeding profusely, cuts big and small, grotesquely visible. Julian, it hurts. There's so much blood. I smeared twice and gave him another dilemma: love or self-interest. Choose one. 9 After that day, I also blocked all of Chloe Miller's contact information. As for what happened after they went to the hospital, I had no idea. I only heard through the Hayes family that Chloe Miller was pregnant. She was already 3 months alone. Good heavens, I was dumbfounded to hear it. 3 months prior was precisely when the Vance family and the Hayes family were discussing Julian Hayes and my marriage. That night, Julian Hayes didn't come home all night. Now, the story behind it was quite clear. I lay in Marcus Hayes's arms, eating the fruit he had washed and handed to me, listening to him tell me gossip. Though it was gossip, everything revolved around me. I heard Mrs. Hayes went directly to Chloe Miller with a group of people out of deference to the Hayes family bloodline she carried. She wasn't beaten, but she was verbally abused severely. They even said that even if she gave birth to the child, she wouldn't be allowed into the family. I had always known this would be the outcome. Mrs. Hayes was not an approachable old lady. In these wealthy families, if you weren't resourceful, you wouldn't last long. Surprisingly, this time, Julian Hayes didn't even protect Chloe Miller. Then, they were passionately devoted to each other, but now they didn't dare fight for love. I couldn't help but sigh, my voice laced with a hint of a sneer. What love is there in our circle? All love is built on a solid economic foundation. How much is pure love really worth? Blunt but true, that's reality. Marcus Hayes seemed to notice my low spirits and kissed me on the corner of my mouth. Perhaps she thinks she's lucky just like me. That remark was somewhat baffling. I was about to ask further when my thoughts were diverted by a phone call. It was Mrs. Hayes. She wanted to arrange matchmaking for Julian Hayes and asked me to introduce some girls from suitable families to attend the matchmaking banquet. Marcus Hayes pinched my soft cheek, looking amused at my excitement. Are you going to this matchmaking banquet? Of course, why wouldn't I? It's such a good show. I'll just watch the drama unfold quietly. 10 I don't know if Julian Hayes's poor character had already spread throughout The entire circle actually, given the Hayes family's influence, it would have been easy to find a family of suitable status, but my wedding debacle had become public knowledge, and everyone instinctively avoided Julian Hayes. Mrs. Hayes was truly out of options, which was why she came to me for help. I put in a lot of effort and could only convinced a few girlfriends to accompany me to watch the drama unfold. As I arrived at the entrance of the matchmaking banquet, I ran into Chloe Miller, dressed in a white gown. Her face was pale, revealing a sense of urgency, but without an invitation, she couldn't get in. I'm Julian Hayes' fiancé. I'm carrying his child. You can't stop me. I shook my head. What was once a beautiful, innocent-looking girl was now flawed. Seeing her so anxious, I decided to give her a hand. I first sent a message to Julian Hayes, then visited Mrs. Hayes, presenting the gift I had chosen in advance. I heard Julian Hayes' fiancé is carrying his child. This gift is for my unborn nephew. Mrs. Hayes looked at me with an unfavorable expression. She naturally knew who I was referring to, but out of concern for the decorum of the banquet, she couldn't properly contend with me looking at Chloe Miller, who was timidly following Julian Hayes. She expressed her unspeakable rage, venting all her frustration. Julian Hayes, this is your matchmaking banquet. Are you bringing just a New York riff here? Chloe Miller, holding back tears, clutched her stomach dramatically. Madam, who are you calling madam? The Hay family isn't a shelter. No trash can sneak in here. Never mind whether the child you're carrying is Julian Hayes, or not. Even if it is, you won't be entering this family. I watched for a while and found it quite uninteresting. Marcus Hayes stood behind me, expressionless the entire time. I couldn't help but suddenly felt a pang of sympathy. His status as a son born out of wedlock had always been his most sensitive point. I pulled Marcus Hayes away from the center of this farce, and we ate at a nearby table. Marcus Hayes breathed a soft, warm sigh. Onion to my neck. Are you feeling a pang of sympathy for me? I'll always be very well behaved. Even though his voice was a bit, I still couldn't help but give his waist a hard pinch, then took a cherry tomato from the table and placed it in his bowl. You'd better continue being this well behaved or else you'll face the consequences. 11 Many of those attending the matchmaking banquet were partners of Hayes Corporation. Marcus Hayes, a shareholder with 10% of Hayes Corporation's shares, naturally couldn't avoid some necessary business drinks. Bored, I hid in a corner of the restaurant. Julian Hayes stood before me, his face grim. Eleanor Vance, you did this on purpose. I knew what Julian Hayes was referring to. It was about me proactively messaging him today regarding Chloe Miller. You still can't let me go, can you? You still love me, don't you? I'll give you one more chance. Just nod and the position of Julian Hayes' wife will still be yours. Julian Hayes seemed to have gone mad, utterly obsessed. He tightly gripped my hands, and no matter how I struggled, I couldn't break free. Luckily, at that moment, a scream broke out. A wine glass filled to the brim shattered not far from Julian Hayes and me. Chloe Miller rushed up in a frenzy, pulling Julian Hayes' hands away from mine. What do you two think you're doing? Perhaps having endured so much indignity from Mrs. Hayes tonight, she decided I was an easy target and unleashed all her anger on me. Eleanor Vance, you're already married, yet you're shamelessly seducing Julian Hayes. I slapped her without hesitation, giving a cold snort. That kind of man might be gold in your eyes, but to me, he's worse than dirt. Who gave you the nerve to yell at me like that? Did you really think I had cultivated myself and lost my temper over the years, that any person or ghost would dare act wildly in front of me? Chloe Miller was left dizzy and disoriented by my slap. She instinctively turned her eyes to Julian Hayes for help. Unfortunately, Julian Hayes stood still, and even his indifferent gaze didn't fall upon her. Around us, continuous mocking laughter erupted with her shrewish demeanor. She actually thinks she can enter the Hayes family's doors. I think she's the shameless one. Chloe Miller's delicate face was strewn with tears. She looked around, seeing enemies everywhere, and could only clutch Julian Hayes' sleeve, seeking a shred of support. Marcus Hayes walked over then, a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. He took my hand, examining it carefully, gently stroking the fresh red mark on my wrist. Wife, does your hand hurt? Next time you can notify me for such violent matters without any warning. He turned and kicked Julian Hayes in the stomach. Julian Hayes crashed into a table of drinks, drenching him in red. I quickly pulled back Marcus Hayes, who was still somewhat agitated, and spoke to Chloe Miller without ceremony. You, the recycling bin, next time, please keep Your trash in check, and don't let your garbage bother other people, and as for your messy affairs, please handle them yourselves, and for heaven's sake, don't bother me. Each word came out of my mouth distinctly. Julian Hayes knelt helplessly on he grow lead, his head bowed, looking utterly disheveled. Chloe Miller tried to help him up, but he pushed her hand away. Get out, Chloe Miller, crying hysterically as she ran out of the banquet, was truly a pitiable sight. Marcus Hayes snorted, brought it upon herself. This wasn't something I could control. I could only control myself and not look back. 12 After our scene, Mrs. Hayes's painstakingly arranged matchmaking banquet was naturally wasted. Julian Hayes's reputation was beyond tarnished, and even the entire Hayes family was implicated. All hopes of marrying into wealth were naturally dashed, but Julian Hayes, unwilling to accept defeat, or perhaps unable to contain his current ambition, couldn't wait to make a move against me. He wanted to prove himself, to prove it to me as the CEO of Hayes Corporation and holding the most shares. Even a shareholder like Marcus Hayes couldn't stop his decisions. Julian Hayes, his eyes red with fury, began to furiously suppress Vance Corporation's assets. Marcus Hayes offered to help, but I refused because I had a plan all along as the heir of the Vance family. Although I had revolved around Julian Hayes for years, it didn't mean I was truly incapable and ignorant. These past few years, I had run around tirelessly with Julian Hayes, accumulating significant connections and resources. Although it was challenging under Hayes Corporation's aggressive suppression, I could at least maintain the core business. Well done, Eleanor Vance, you've certainly learned all my tricks over the years. Julian Hayes, his crimson eyes fixed on me, glaring fiercely. You approached me with a plan all along. This self-destructive move naturally couldn't be accepted by all shareholders of Hayes Corporation. Every day it dragged on, he would bear greater pressure. I nodded as a matter of course, no longer dwelling on his words. Since it's a business war, one must know your enemy. So, did you ever love me? Julian Hayes clank had his fist as if the answer truly mattered to him. I gave a self-mocking laugh, my eyes momentarily unfocused, then quickly cleared. Does it matter? At least now and in the future, I will no longer love you. A person like you doesn't deserve love. Hearing my answer, Julian Hayes instinctively took 2 steps back, knocking over a set of blue and white porcelain teaware on the coffee table, shattering it across the floor. I didn't lift my head, my voice cold as I said, Mr. Hayes, please compensate me for that set of teaware. Julian Hayes looked at me deeply, silent. He opened his mouth, speechless, and could only leave, defeated and powerless. 13 In the days that followed, just when I thought Julian Hayes would stop his self-destructive suppression, I didn't expect his actions to become even more aggressive. He successfully snatched several of my projects with low bids. It was at this moment that explosive news suddenly appeared online. Chloe Miller was forced to have an abortion, and the one who took her for the forced abortion was the man she loved most. Julian Hayes, her dream of marrying into wealth, was ultimately shattered. The company that released this news was Vance Media, the biggest media company in the circle. They even did a special interview with Chloe Miller for several consecutive days. This news was prominently displayed as the top trending topic wherever Julian Hayes went. He was surrounded by onlookers. Hayes Corporation stock price plummeted as the primary person in charge. Julian Hayes naturally couldn't escape blame. He lost his position as CEO of Hayes Corporation and also lost his place as the primary heir of the Hayes family, and the one who took his place was Marcus Hayes. As the eldest young master of the Hayes family, Julian Hayes had been favored since childhood, leading him to mistakenly believe there was no one else in the Hayes family besides him. But to the Hayes family, Marcus Hayes was also of their bloodline. They cared about who could bring them more wealth, not self-destructive unnecessary losses. Mrs. Hayes looked at the dejected Julian Hayes, shaking her head weakly. I won against Marcus Hayes's mother my entire life, but I never expected to lose to her son. You fought with Marcus Hayes for so many years, but you are indeed inferior to him. I dressed elegantly, attended his CEO inauguration with Marcus Hayes soon after. Julian Hayes's fate was announced. He was exiled to out of state to manage a branch company. This effectively banished him from the Hayes family's power center. The remaining shares he held were only entitled to annual dividend rights. 14 Before Julian Hayes left, he found me one more time. He had originally asked to meet me, but I refused. He could only block my car in front of the company entrance. The sun was intense that day, and the temperature was high. He stood in front of the car, faltering, the dignified and arrogant young master of the Hayes family, once so spirited and competent, now had no longer had any trace of his spirited and competent demeanor. More and more passers-by gathered. I reluctantly rolled down the car window. Not even bothering to get out. Something wrong? Julian Hayes's face was covered in sweat, and he looked somewhat disheveled as he gazed at me. Ellie, are you so distant now that you won't even see me or speak to me? Just say what you need to say. I'm not really interested in seeing you. I waved my hand, cutting him off. He stumbled over his words, a bitter smile on his face. I regret it. I once had the most beautiful love, the most perfect career, and now I have nothing. I remained expressionless, simply listening quietly. Indeed, once I no longer felt anything for someone, they could no longer stir any emotion within me. After you left, I realized I wasn't that I didn't love you. I've missed you so much lately. It's just that I never learned to appreciate the good things I had. A species growing more unfocused. Seeing that I remained silent, he finally took off a lucky charm from his wrist and held it out to me. This was something I prayed for him on his birthday. Every year on his birthday, I would fast and pray for 3 days, seeking this lucky charm for him, but this time, I didn't take it. He held on for a moment, his eyes growing more unfocused. I'm sorry I hurt you in this life. I hope we meet again in the next. I watched him turn and leave. Seeing him off into the distance, I softly spoke my last words. Let's never meet again. His retreating back paused slightly, an unidentifiable despondent feeling emanating from him. 15, and I said we'd never meet again. Unfortunately, I soon saw him once more. Julian Hayes was hit by a frenzied Chloe Miller on his way to the airport. Chloe Miller, having lost her child and with her dreams shattered, lost control and drove straight into Julian Hayes. Julian Hayes broke both his legs and was destined to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Chloe Miller was immediately arrested, shouting deliriously, Julian Hayes, you can only be mine. I am Mrs. Hayes. After being held for over half a year, Chloe Miller was eventually released by Julian Hayes. No charges were pressed and the two decided to settle privately. Chloe Miller ultimately did not get her wish of marrying into the Hayes family. Julian Hayes, who had lost the use of his legs, later married a woman from a respectable background arranged by Mrs. Hayes. He lived a quiet life, relying on the dividend rights from his shares in the Hayes family. As for Chloe Miller, she disappeared from that circle until I was on a business trip and on a whim decided to sponsor a struggling school. Where I found her, she saw me and read me proactively. Ellie, long time no see. I noticed that she now radiated the very spirit I had admired in her when she was younger, that resilient, unyielding spirit. Her eyes were glowing. It looks like you're doing very well here. Chloe Miller instinctively touched her stomach, a trace of sadness on her face. People always have to learn to grow. All that wasted effort ultimately leaves you with nothing. My youth was a complete mess and my child is my greatest regret. I don't want anyone else to go down this wrong path that I took. The laughter of children echoed from the school playground. A child ran over and offered a bottle of water to Ms. Miller and me. Ms. Miller, pretty lady, please drink some water. She smiled and patted the child's head, her expression dignified and serious. Ms. Advance, if possible please consider sponsoring this school. She used a formal address, wanting to keep our interaction strictly professional. I smiled and lightly patted her shoulder. All right, this time I believe you. Back at the office, I told Marcus Hayes about it. Marcus Hayes, puppy Ike, leaned his head on my shoulder. Ellie, whatever you decide is fine anyway. I'm penniless now and completely reliant on you for food. Indeed, he was penniless. Apart from the title of CEO of Ase Corporation, he no longer had any shares. Everything had been transferred to my name. This included Vance Group, the largest media enterprise in the country, which he secretly controlled. Vance, Marcus Hayes, who had ulterior motives, had a plan all along. I always said there was no true love in our circle, but now I think I was wrong. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your opinions and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.